Paul Givan, first of all, you gave 34,000 people reason to be very concerned about having to pay the bedroom tax. But in fact, as the Finance Minister told you, the mitigation payments can be made.
Well, unfortunately, the Finance Minister is wrong. And the advice that I've received from my Permanent Secretary backs that up, with very clear legal advice received from the Attorney-General. I don't know if the Finance Minister has consulted the Attorney-General, maybe he should. But I'm very concerned, and that's why I've had to take the unprecedented action after exploring all of the emergency options to lay now regulations in the Assembly, going directly to the Assembly and asking for members to vote on that on Monday. It's with the Speaker. The Business Committee would need to be convened to do that.
The mitigations can be made. You have found a way, as the Finance Minister sitting beside you said you would.
Well, under the normal circumstances, you bring a regulation to the Executive. I had that.
We're not in normal circumstances.
No, well, absolutely. Under normal circumstances, you take the regulation to the Executive. Because of Sinn Féin's action, there is no Executive, and I am determined that those vulnerable individuals that we wanted to protect from the bedroom tax are not going to be used as part of the collateral damage as a result of the Executive collapse.
But they're not going to lose out. Just to clarify, 34,000 people dependent on not having to pay the bedroom tax because of mitigations will not have to pay the bedroom tax.
If politicians follow now the lead that I'm giving on this.
Why would they not?
Correct.
Why would they not?
Well, I hope that they don't, but I have had to take this action now, laying these regulations in the unusual circumstances that they are, in order to protect these individuals. This is not the way you normally conduct business, but given the unprecedented circumstances that we now face as a result of Sinn Féin's actions, I'm taking this action based on the very clear legal advice that I've now received, and these regulations will be laid. And that contradicts what the Finance Minister has repeatedly went out to say, and indeed has resorted to character assassination whenever he's been trying to justify his actions.
Right.
And I think that's wrong.
Let's hear from Mairtin O Muilleoir, the Finance Minister who's sitting beside you. Look, a way for mitigation payments to be made has now been found. Do you welcome that fact, and can you confirm that Sinn Féin politicians on Monday will support what the Communities Minister is doing?
Let's nail this. This is the 5th time I put this on the record in the BBC. There will be no bedroom tax. In an interview in the BBC with me on Monday night, Paul said that because the Executive was coming down, that he would have to introduce a bedroom tax. In an interview in the BBC, he said there's a 99% chance he'll have to introduce a bedroom tax. And I said to him, go back and explore the 1%.
But he's sitting beside you now, and he seems to have suggested that as long as politicians fall into line and support the actions that he's taking on Monday, it'll be sorted.
Well, if he had taken my advice on Monday and again later in the week, there will be no bedroom tax. And we fought long and hard against Tory austerity. We got the DUP eventually on that page. We have insisted there should be no bedroom tax here. There will not be.
Right.
And whether Paul does it through regulation or through the mitigation payments, which he's quite able to do so. In fact, at the minute, he's making PIP payments and without regulation from his department. So he has the ability to make these payments. I'm quite relaxed, but I'm saying to Paul Givan tonight, and I'm saying to the DUP, you shouldn't have scaremongered on this issue and tried to frighten ordinary families. But number two, I'm also saying to the DUP, there will not be a bedroom tax introduced.
Because Sinn Féin MLAs will support whatever administrative legislation or whatever's placed before the House on Monday.
It's the prerogative of the Minister to get it sorted out, but he can be assured that Sinn Féin will support him in opposing the bedroom tax, and he shouldn't have introduced the issue. It is not an issue. There will be no bedroom tax, and we will make sure that there is no bedroom tax.
OK, Paul Givan is planning to bring his bedroom tax proposals directly to the Assembly on Monday. We've established that. Shouldn't your party colleague Michelle O'Neill, who's the Health Minister, of course, be doing exactly the same thing with her proposals to cut waiting lists, which she now says she is going to have to drop?
Well, I think they're two different issues, but you bring us back to the reason why we're in this political impasse. We're in this political impasse not of our making, but because of the work of the DUP. We did not create the RHI debacle and scandal.
Hang on, you go way off subject here. I'm asking you, if Paul Givan can sort out the bedroom tax on Monday, why can't Michelle O'Neill use exactly the same method to sort out the waiting list problem that she clearly has?
Because no one is suggesting that can be sorted out by regulation and stormont. And what I'm saying to you,
why is it different?
It's absolutely different, because Paul has to find a way and I've offered him two ways. He can either do it through his own administration.
Why can't she find a way?
Because that cannot be introduced on
Why can it not be introduced, but that can?
Because it's absolutely different. There are two different things. He has the money to make payments and should make it. But let me come back to this point. The impasse we're in, and none of us are more disappointed, I think, than I am as finance minister, than the people I meet every day right across the community. We're in this impasse. We're in this impasse because of the behaviour of the DUP.
Right.
Not only around.
So your powers are limited then, are they? You can give two ways to Paul Givan to sort out the problem of bedroom tax, but you can't find a way for your party colleague, the health minister, to sort out the problem for waiting lists. That's impossible.
No, I'm not. And the health minister has said today that she is continuing to tackle all those issues. But what I am saying to you is we are now moving into an election period. It will be a snap election. The ministers will remain in their posts in the time ahead, but there will be disruption, and we understand it. And the blame for that disruption lies squarely at the door of the DUP. If Paul Givan had not engaged in the petty sectarian antics on the eve of Christmas in relation to LIFA, if Arlene Foster had have done the right thing and stood aside and allowed a proper no hiding place investigation to take place, then we would not be in this position.
Come on to RHI. And of course, the other view, of course, is that we are in the situation we are in because Martin McGuinness chose to resign as Deputy First Minister on Monday.
And I think right across the community, people respect the work, the heroic work Martin McGuinness has done.
Well, that doesn't
over
mean
10
that they
years.
don't wish that he'd stayed in his job.
No, actually, I disagree with you. I think that people saw no greater peacemaker, no greater bridge builder than Martin McGuinness. He took it as far as he could take it. He stretched me. He stretched the Republican constituency again and again. He said, let's have a fresh start. And we tried that fresh start. And to bring Martin McGuinness to the point where he had to say, we have to call a halt to this corruption, to this bigotry, to this refusal to show respect. Sorry, fair enough. We have to call a halt. We have to draw a line in the sand and say the refusal of the DUP to engage in proper power sharing, to respect parity of esteem. And this is just, if I may say this, this is the wearying point about the DUP's refusal to sign up to parity of esteem.
Well, look,
if I may just finish this
in
point.
a sentence, if you would.
Okay. This is the wearying point. Paul finally did the right thing today. When he restored the LIFA money. But then he said tonight, by the way, I didn't do it because I understood it was the wrong thing to take money from young people learning Irish, but because he was trying to remove an electoral advantage from Sinn Féin. The mind boggles. Do the DUP not get it? People want him to respect ordinary people. Let's respect the LGBT.
Paul Givan, explain to Martin O Muilleoir precisely where you are on the LIFA thing, because he either doesn't understand it or he's not happy with what you've said so far.
Well, let me first of all welcome that Martin recognises now that my solution is the way to deal with bedroom tax, and I welcome, and that's progress, that they're going to support my approach to deal with that, because I had to find that solution. Martin never suggested this as the solution.
I think we've dealt with bedroom tax. You both agree there will not be bedroom tax.
Agreed.
Is that correct?
On bedroom tax, my approach was right. I welcome Sinn Féin now realising that. In respect of the point that you make, and it is well made, and people who are on waiting lists, people who are going to be implicated, having the implications of what Sinn Féin's actions have, are putting those people, using those people, to pursue the party political agenda that Sinn Féin have. And I think that is hugely regrettable.
So Martin O Muilleoir says you were scaremongering in the bedroom tax. Just to be clear, are you saying that Michelle O'Neill is scaremongering on waiting lists?
Well, I'm saying that because of the executive now having to go away because we're going to go into an election, ministers aren't able to action certain things, and now you're seeing the manifestation of that. We don't have a budget because Martin failed to bring forward a budget. And therefore,
so
as a
maybe you
result,
should have thought a bit more carefully about withdrawing funding from LIFA, as you did on December the 23rd, on the eve of Christmas Eve.
I'm happy to come to LIFA. We have no budget now as a result of Martin's failure to bring a budget whenever there was an opportunity to do it. His permanent secretary then cannot implement all of the finances.
We know this, we understand this.
And so who's going to suffer?
That was not the case on December the 23rd when you unilaterally decided to remove funding of £50,000 from a LIFA bursary scheme. Why did you do that?
And who's going to suffer? The people are going to suffer. And politicians need to always remember we are elected to serve the people. And there has been a clear failure to recognise that.
What prompted your U-turn on LIFA today? Because that's what it was.
Again, I want to make sure that Sinn Féin are not able to continue to take this line, which Martin has repeated tonight, that decision was sectarian. It is not.
You didn't think for a second when you took that decision that they might be annoyed about it and they might accuse you of that?
If I can just give me 1 minute to explain these answers, and I'll hopefully be able to do that. Martin has said this evening that decision was sectarian. How can a decision be sectarian when the Irish language is for all of our people? And that proves the point that I keep making. Sinn Féin sectarianised the language by saying that it is the preserve of the Republican community. And that is the problem.
Right.
And I'm
so
not
your
prepared.
solution to that problem was to remove funding of £50,000 from LEAFA, is that right?
I wasn't prepared to allow Sinn Féin to inflict further damage on the Irish language.
OK, so did the First
the
Minister
cultural...
know that you were going to make that announcement on the 23rd of December? Had you talked to her about that?
Well, whenever I was taking the decision around in December, that 50,000, that decision was my decision. I took it on the basis that it would have been premature.
That was a solo run.
It would have been premature to have commit expenditure in the next financial year. However, recognising the way in which...
Did you talk to the First Minister about it?
No, I didn't.
Did you talk to any other members of the executive about it?
No, I didn't.
So it was a solo run,
recognising...
which you've now had to reverse. It was a mistake, wasn't it?
Recognising the damage that Sinn Féin have been seeking to use now around the Irish language, I'm not prepared to allow them to do that, but they would
well,
rather...
you've made that point, so I want to move on.
Well,
you say you didn't discuss with the First Minister removing the funding on the 23rd of December. Did the First Minister tell you today to reinstate it?
No, well, I spoke with the First Minister this morning.
Did she tell you to reinstate it?
If I have the opportunity to actually give you the answer, we will get to that. I spoke with the First Minister this morning. I made it clear to her my view that Sinn Féin were using this issue now to distract from all of the other issues, and that I felt that it was, one, damaging to the Irish language, and two, that it was being used as a political distraction.
And what did she say?
She said that I could act on the basis that I then did act.
Right.
So
she didn't tell you to do that? She didn't ring you up and say,
no,
listen, you've made a dog's breakfast of this, you better sort it out?
No, she didn't, because I can see what Sinn Féin have been doing around the Irish language. They have sectarianised it, they have used it as a cultural weapon against unionism, and that is wrong for the language,
and with the benefit
it is
of
damaging to community
with the benefit
relations.
of hindsight now, which you have, which you did not have on December the 23rd, do you think it was worth all of the fuss producing the straw that broke the camel's back by removing that £50,000 of funding, which by my calculation is a 20,000th of your £1 billion budget?
Well, LEAFA has been used as a fig leaf for what Sinn Féin are really trying to do. What Sinn Féin are trying to do is use this opportunity to try and weaken unionism, and we are very clear about what they've been seeking to do. They've demanded that Arlene Foster step aside repeatedly because they want to remove her as the leader, because Republicans are frustrated that they're not able to take their agenda forward whenever it's about, as Barry McElduff said, Martin McGuinness resigned because we want a united Ireland.
Right, so
no mention
Martin
of
O'Muilleoir, how do you
LEAFA.
respond to that?
No mention
Paul Givan clearly
of
believes he's
RHI.
outfoxed you on LEAFA because he spotted what you were at and he called your bluff.
And as I said earlier, all the good of the LEAFA decision was dissipated tonight when Paul actually said the only reason he took a decision was to try and get one over in Sinn Féin. Instead of saying that he now understands and accepts, apologised for it, fair enough, but now understands and accepts that it's wrong to discriminate against children just because they speak Irish.
Is it not good to hear a DUP Communities Minister sitting there saying that he believes the Irish language is for everybody? Or do you not believe him when he says that?
No, and absolutely, and it's great to see Paul coming to that page with the rest of us as well. But let me say this, Paul isn't fit to tie the laces of the Presbyterians who did revive the Irish language, or the people from the Presbyterian tradition today who are promoting the Irish language. His actions speak louder than words in the Irish language, whether it's Peter Weir, first day in office, removing all Irish from his department, whether it's a Curry My Yoghurt quote we saw earlier on, whether it's changing the name of boats. I suppose that the broader point is, when are the DUP going to accept the principles of parity, esteem and equal
Unionists
treatment?
might be concerned. They might think it's a bit rich coming from Mairtin O Muilleoir because, and you can just clear this up for us now if you don't mind, there was a lot of talk during the week that you removed a union flag on a designated day from your office. Is that right?
No, it wasn't a designated day, and the flag should not be flying on my office.
So how come it was flying?
Well, that's a matter for whoever put it up, but it shouldn't have been.
Well, who did put it up?
Well, I presume the gentleman who came in the morning put it up, and that's a question of them. I think it was put up by mistake. It shouldn't have been up, and I removed it. And it's, there is legislation governing this. And I observe that legislation. I haven't tried to challenge that legislation because, especially at this time.
Right.
But I think
are you happy enough with the union flag? Well, maybe not happy enough. But do you accept that a union flag will fly over your office on a designated day?
Actually, it turns out that my office isn't a designated office either. And on the designated days, the buildings are there. I object wholeheartedly to that policy.
You do object wholeheartedly?
Yes, I think it should be two flags or no flag. But that is the law. We will continue to challenge it. But in my office, there will no flags go up in my office on days that are not designated.
Right. Now, look, let's talk about an election. You seem pretty keen within Sinn Féin to get an election so that people can have their say, even though we all had our say just 7 months ago. What would stop the election train in its tracks?
Well, we're going to an election. I don't think
we're not inevitably going to an election.
I think inexorably we are going to an election. I think that people have to be given an opportunity to have their say on the DUP's arrogance, and you saw more of it tonight, and belligerence. I think they have to have their say on the RHI scandal. Arlene Foster stood up in the Stormont Assembly and said she is the architect of RHI. We know it's a mess. We know that every day, from my purse and your public purse, we're losing £85,000. We know there are allegations of corruption. We know that before Christmas we saw the most unedifying spectacle in Stormont where the integrity of the office of the Speaker then was compromised and thrown away.
Look, the relief issue's been resolved. Bedroom tax is as good as sorted, we hear. Arlene Foster now says she's supporting a public inquiry into the RHI scandal. If, let's just say, legacy was sorted out, an offer was put on the table in the next few days from the DUP on that, could we not avoid an election?
Well, of course, bedroom tax was never an issue because, as I told Paul from Monday, there will be no bedroom tax here. Let me just say, since you've introduced legacy, let's talk just a little bit about the British government, because I see Mr Brokenshire pretending to be an honest broker in all of this. And the issue of legacy in particular, it's absolutely disgraceful and appalling. And they've given the DUP...
he is an honest broker, but anyway.
Well, I understand, but they've given the DUP a lot of cover on many things, and we'll come to those. But in particular in the issue of legacy, where the Lord Chief Justice, unprecedented, says to the British, says to the DUP, says to the First Deputy First Minister, let's have inquests, and the DUP and the British gang up to prevent that.
So listen, I don't want to rehearse that debate. We have had this conversation. My point is that if the DUP accepted your argument and said, we will actually move towards you on the issue of, for example, legacy inquests, would that not be enough for us to avoid a costly election?
Credibility in these institutions is shot. It is drained away.
How does a fresh election sort that out?
Well, I think it does sort it out, but also people see through what the DUP are doing. People see through what they're doing. Arlene Foster had a unique opportunity. And remember, it's not that long ago since there was an allegation against me which proved to be absolutely groundless and insignificant. And Arlene Foster went on radio and said, I should step aside.
And you didn't?
Of course I didn't, but by her own yardstick, if that's the yardstick she's using, why did she step aside? So people see through these belated...
By your yardstick, she shouldn't step aside.
No,
she's quite right to not step aside. Well, that's the logic of that.
No,
I want to bring Paul Givan in. Arlene Foster's already predicted if there's an election, it'll be brutal. Brutal, maybe, in terms of potential losses for the DUP?
Well, we're going to go very strongly to the electorate, highlighting what this is really about. And what this is about, Sinn Féin have shown what it's about. It's not about RHI. In the letter that Martin McGuinness signed in his resignation, it became very clear this is about Sinn Féin frustrated that the key Republican agenda that they have has not been delivered. That's why Barry McElduff said the resignation was about delivering a united Ireland. And whenever Sinn Féin, and I can understand why they're frustrated.
Can't be a surprise to you. Of course,
no, of course,
Sinn Féin wants united Ireland.
Absolutely.
So does the SDLP.
And that's exactly why they're trying to bring this to a head, because they want to use this to extract an advantage for Republicans, and they're seeking to weaken unionism. And our people can see exactly the tactics that are going on. When David Trimble brought down the institutions on 3 occasions, he did so from a position of weakness, and he always ended up costing unionism. Sinn Féin are the ones bringing these institutions down, and they should have learned from history. But we know, because Jerry Adams has said it, equality is the Trojan horse to break these, and I'll not use the foul language he then sought to use against those in the DUP and unionists. So we know exactly
Martin O'Malley on the radio
what Sinn
today said
Féin
he
are
wouldn't
about.
have used that language. Do you seriously think that over the past number of weeks the DUP has demonstrated a sure-handed grasp of the issues and a fitness for government? Or is it possibly the case that people within your own party, your own grassroots, are wondering aloud if you've frankly lost your way in the DUP?
No, because at every step we have been dealing with RHI. We have recognised the flaws that existed whenever it was set up. Other parties didn't see that. When Simon Hamilton from He's came into office, he has been seeking to deal with this.
No, you made a mess.
Sinn Féin,
now you're trying to fix it. The point is that you made the mess in the first place.
No, the point is we have recognised, and Arlene Foster has said the deepest political regret of her career was not having those cost controls in place.
She did.
So we know that the public
But you don't just say that and then move on to the next thing.
No, you go and fix it,
There
Mark.
are implications and consequences
Absolutely
of an admission
is.
like that.
Absolutely.
But Arlene Foster
And you
doesn't seem
fix
to
it.
recognise that
And
fact.
you fix the problem, and that's what the public expect politicians politicians to do, not walk away from these challenges, meet them head on and fix them. And that's exactly what we have been doing. We have sought to have the public inquiry set up because of the election.
Well, you now want a public inquiry. For a long time you said you didn't want a public inquiry, but you've changed. That's another U-turn you've done.
We've wanted to have the cost control mechanisms put in place. There are proposals there now.
You've done a U-turn on a public inquiry, haven't you?
Which Mairtin's officials are dealing with, and I trust that they will be able to assess it and provide him with the advice, and that won't be interfered with.
Maybe you didn't hear me there. I made the point
level.
a couple of times. You've done a U-turn on a public inquiry as well, haven't you?
No, not at all.
Yes, you have.
No, we have.
Yes, you have. The DUP in Belfast City Council voted against a public inquiry last week. Edwin Poots, very clear in the House, said, listen carefully, hear my words, there will be no public inquiry. Now, all of a sudden, the DUP wants a public inquiry. That's a U-turn.
No, Arlene Foster has said, we want to get to the truth, as do I, through an independent inquiry, free from party political interference. So when Mairtin comes on this programme and talks about corruption and says things without any evidence to back it up, quite rightly it's pointed out that these are all alleged, because they want to engage in character assassination.
Well, where
of
is the
Arlene
public
Foster,
inquiry? Where's the announcement?
To remove her
on
as the leader
Tuesday,
of unionism.
your party leader, former First Minister, said within 24 hours she would be making an announcement about a public inquiry. More than 24 hours late, we still don't know what's happening. What's the problem there?
Well, obviously there's an ongoing process to get that.
Well, there's a sticking point, obviously.
Well, there is.
What is the sticking point?
We have made it clear we want to get an inquiry. If that is a public inquiry, that's how we want it. But interestingly, Sinn Féin don't want a public inquiry. Why is that? Because the Pat Finucane family don't want to have a public inquiry.
But Arlene Foster promised a public inquiry, and now you can't deliver a public inquiry.
They, again, are more interested in appeasing the Republican agenda than actually dealing with this particular issue.
But here my point, and I want to bring in Mairtin O Muilleoir again. Arlene Foster promised a public inquiry more than 48 hours ago. It's hit a sticking point. You can't at the moment deliver a public inquiry.
Well,
is that correct?
Let's be clear.
Is that correct?
We want to have the inquiry.
I understand that. My point is that you don't seem to be able to deliver it at the moment.
Well, let's be clear. Part of the reasons that we're not able to have this inquiry is because Sinn Féin are pulling the shutters down on the institutions.
Right.
So at a time...
OK, Mairtin O Muilleoir, where are we on an investigation inquiry? Because to pick up, to pick up on Paul Givan's point, because Martin McGuinness has now walked away from the executive, it's collapsed, you can't actually investigate the very thing you began this interview talking about as the reason for the collapse of the executive.
Well, actually, it's one of the reasons. I think I said I talked about allegations of corruption. I talked about the breathtaking arrogance of the DUP.
You talked several times about RHI.
And I talked about the refusal to accept parity of esteem and the principles of the Good Friday Agreement. But in terms of an inquiry, if Paul wants to bring forward proposals, let him do that.
But it's made all the more difficult now because of the route that Sinn Féin has taken.
No, well, not at all. It's made it all the more difficult. But we'll see what he comes up with. And if a friend of his or someone comes up with a proposal, we'll look at it. But what I'll say is this. Let's go back to the examples of the arrogance that led us here. Arlene Foster had an opportunity. We need to investigate this botched scheme. She was at the helm. A DUP finance minister signed off on it at the time as well. Another DUP economic minister was in this studio making allegations about that scheme. We know it was an absolute mess. We know it's cost us a lot of money. And there should have been an investigation. I think they missed a golden opportunity to say to the public, look, we understand you believe, the DUP believes in a culture of bullying.
Very quickly.
Instead of that, we're going to show humility and have an investigation. And they didn't do that.
Right. A final quick question to both of you. We have an election, do we? This is your assessment. We have an election, and then after that election, we have talks for a limited period to see if we can get the Assembly back up and running again.
Well, I think what we've done is we've called time on the DUP's bullying and their arrogance and the discrimination and the refusal to accept mutual respect. Well, no, but I think it's very important to say it, and we're back to the issues of equality. We're back to the issues of the Good Friday Agreement.
In a political vacuum.
We're back to
staring direct rule in the face.
Well, let's just finish this. So we are going to go to election. People will have a chance to have their verdict on the behaviour of the DUP and the time that's passed. And I'm confident of how the people will respond.
Final sentence, Paul Givan.
Gerry Adams has made it clear. Equality is the Trojan horse to break unionism, and what he really wants is compliant unionists that roll over to Republicans. And time again, we will not do that. And that's really what Sinn Féin is about, because they're frustrated that we won't concede to key Republican demands. And the public see that.
No one should be afraid of equality.
Public see that.
All right,
we know what you're using it for.
We know what you're using it for.
We know what you're using it for.
If we have